All right, my friends, good morning. Time for the hands-free drive to work. Look, you know this was designed so that you can, at the very same time, steer yourself from home to work and have a conversation about steering yourselves well once we get to work. And so we said if we want different results in our lives, that we absolutely have to change our actions. But we know that we'll never truly change our actions until we change the way we think. And then last, we know that there's still a gap between our thinking and our actions. There's oftentimes we know exactly what to do. We know the next step that needs to be made, but we still fail to make that choice and actually do it. So we need to actually learn to decide differently as well. And so in all of our conversations, one of those three integral pieces is addressed, that we have to change our actions, or we have to change our thinking, or we have to change the way that we decide. And we had a healthy debate this weekend with some buddies, and we were talking about endless options. We were talking about how when we present as a salesperson or anybody who's trying to move another person in a certain direction, if we're all in sales, as Dan Pink says, then what we're all trying to do is move people in the direction we're trying to encourage them to go, because ultimately we know that there's a met need. Now this is just us. Everybody's not this way. They're trying to close the deal, but we know the closer we get to a closed deal is the closer we get to a met need. If we continue to encourage people in that direction, then we're always going to be encouraging them in the right direction, because we're ultimately trying to meet their needs. And so in doing so, we were talking about how we're giving people options. You know, you're giving people options anytime you're selling a product. You're giving people options, because we know that we've said about wisdom, we don't know the future. And so a lot of times when we're deciding what to do today, we have to take into account all the things that we can know and all the things that we cannot know about the future. And so especially when you're talking about taste, how we should design a specific space, or we're talking about, something like with a life insurance policy. I don't know when you're going to die, so I don't know the exact right policy to offer, because I'm not 100% sure when you would die. So what we have to do is say, okay, well, what's our next wise move? If we're designing a space at the same time, we can say, look, I know what's going to happen right when we open this space, but what about 5 years from now? Are we going to have to redo the whole thing if maybe the current tenant moves out? There's a lot of different options that we have to take into account. And so what we were talking about this weekend was how that when we present someone with a solution to their problems, and we want them to actually make a decision to purchase a service or a product from us, we talked about the importance of giving options, but not too many options. We talked about the importance of giving options, but not too many options. And we didn't go into this much depth this weekend, but there was actually a study done recently about this. And here was what the study, here's what they did. They took, over at a farmer's market in California, researchers set up 2 different displays over a couple weeks of time. And they set up jams. That was what they were selling. And so they set up 24 different flavors of the jams, and on one of the incidences, they set up 24 different flavors. And so the next 2 weeks period, they only set up 6 flavors. And so then they studied at that farmer's market over those 2-week periods, how many people stopped to look at their goods, how many people actually purchased their goods. Which one do you think people stopped at more? The one with 24 options, or the one with only 6 options? It's the one with 24 options. Yeah, people saw, look at all these jams, and almost 60 out of 100 people who walked by this display actually stopped at the display. Where when there was only 6 options, only about 40% of the people stopped by and took a look at the jams. So you got 60%, 60 out of 100 people who stopped by. Then you have only 40% who stopped by in the 6 jam example. So on the surface, it seems like, oh yeah, of course, more options better, you're better off in the results. But at the end of the day, are you really there to let people see those jams? Or are you there to make sure that somebody goes home with one of those delicious treats? Of course, it doesn't help them just to see the jams. It doesn't turn a profit if they see the jams. It only turns a profit if they purchase. And so, which of the two were more likely to purchase? And I won't bore you with all the numbers, but overwhelmingly, almost twice as many people who stopped at the table with only 6 jams actually purchased the product. So what these researchers determined and what they concluded from their research is that a lot of options may draw some attention, but it also draws short attention that doesn't end up in a purchase. But while fewer options may draw less attention, but then ultimately it ends up in more often out of 100 people that walk by, more actually purchased, more of those 100 that pass by purchased from the 6 table jam than the 24 table jam. Do you see that? Do you see why? It's hard to take statistics and then interpret those statistics. But what these researchers determined is when you gave someone that many options, yes, it kind of drew them in to take a look, but ultimately they walked away without ever actually being able to decide if they wanted that jam or not. Where when there was only 6 options, fewer people actually stopped, but the ones who did were able to narrow their focus and make a choice almost immediately. So how can we take this research and really try to maximize our efforts? And I think there's 2 ways. One, initially, we know what draws more people in. It's options. And so when we have a broad shoot, if we're looking out, doing marketing for the whole entire community, we need to say, let's broaden our scope, and here's all the options that we can offer as an agency or a provider. Here's all the things that we can do. And that'll get the most people interested. But then immediately when someone's interested, we need to help them turn their focus from the broad right down to the narrow. Ask a few good clarifying questions so that we can determine what their needs are and what they're actually looking for. That we can take them from 24 options down to just 6 options as quickly as we possibly can. And I'll give you a quick example with us and with life insurance. I love selling life insurance. I think it's a great product. I think it's a need for almost every American because we live in a society where we purchase things now and pay for it later. So life insurance is absolutely essential to sustain our entire system. And so I love talking to people about life insurance, but when I sit down with a family, a lot of times when I ask people broadly, what are your thoughts about life insurance? I just ask for really broad information, but almost always I try to get them to sit down and have a conversation with me about their specific needs. And when we get all the way down to an offer, I talk about their needs, what they need, what they need, what they need. Initially, we may say, here's life insurance and here's how it works. There's permanent life insurance, there's term life insurance, there's universal life insurance, all these things. But the minute that they actually engage with me as a provider and they want to know my opinion about life insurance, I ask very specific questions about their needs. Now, can I be sure that they need $524,000 in life insurance or $675,000 in life insurance if they died 10 years from now? No, because their situation will absolutely change. But I can assess very accurately what they'll need today, and I can be fairly reasonably close to the 5-year mark. But instead of saying fairly and reasonably close at the 5-year mark, you know what I do? I offer them actually one solution. I offer, after we have this conversation and I get down to what do you need, I'll usually offer just one solution. And from that one solution, I know there's a couple different ways that things can go. They can say, yes, I absolutely see that need and I want to fill that need right now. Or they can say, you know what, that's too much coverage, that's too little coverage. They can say that's too much money or that's too little money. And then from there, though, if I start at a point, now if it's too much money, I can easily go to something that's a little less money that's very similar product. But if I just go broad, then I have to take into account all the other variables, and now I have to take into account, we have to decrease this price. Do you see what I see? What I'm doing? I'm just isolating those variables. When a customer tells me what you provided is too much, if I've provided 10 things, now I have to go and adjust all 10 of those things for price. But if I've only offered them one thing, now I just have to adjust that one thing for price. Or if they say, that seems like too much coverage, we can go back and address the needs. But the more specific I get when I'm engaged person to person with someone, the more I can actually pinpoint what their need, and that's what finally leads to them choosing to separate themselves from those dollars and actually meet that need. That will make us effective in convincing people to meet their own needs, spending their money. That's what we're looking for. At the end of the day, we don't want people to just say we're nice, say that we're good old folks. We want to actually help them meet their needs. Thank you for listening. Hands-free drive to work.